The decree came on a Tuesday. Not that Tuesday meant anything to the Galactic Assembly. Their calendar spiraled in 17 cycle arcs measured by the pulse of a dying star in the Orion Spur. But Ambassador Ethan Cross noted it was a Tuesday because he had grown up on Earth, because his mother used to make pancakes on Tuesdays, and because it seemed appropriate that the end of humanity's place among the stars arrived on the most forgettable day of the week. High Counselor Zyrex Thorne read the verdict from a podium carved from the bones of a dead moon. His 4 eyes swept the chamber without shame. His voice carried the practiced gravity of someone who had rehearsed cruelty until it felt like justice. The species designated Homo sapiens, Thorne intoned, has demonstrated consistent patterns of volatility, emotional irrationality, and an unwillingness to subordinate individual ambition to collective galactic harmony. By unanimous vote of the Assembly, humanity is hereby expelled from the Interstellar Compact. All human representatives are to vacate their posts within 30 planetary rotations. All human technology is to be decommissioned from shared networks. All human-operated stations are to be surrendered. He paused, letting the silence land like a gavel. You are, as of this moment, alone. Ethan Cross sat in the gallery and said nothing. He did not weep. He did not rage. He folded his hands in his lap, looked at Thorne with steady brown eyes, and nodded once, the slow, quiet nod of a man who had already made peace with something the room had not yet understood. Very well, he said simply. And then humanity left. They did not slam doors. They did not deliver speeches. They filed out of every shared station, every joint research outpost, every collaborative habitat with the same quiet efficiency they had always brought to hard work that went unappreciated. Ethan Cross personally walked the last human crew off the Kepler 7 relay station, shook hands with the Vorith skeleton crew taking over, and wished them luck with the atmospheric stabilizers, which, he mentioned gently, had a quirk in the secondary coil that required a manual bypass every 11 days. The Vorith technician blinked 4 of his 6 eyes and said he was sure they could manage. Ethan smiled and said nothing more. 30 days after the decree, the last human ship crossed the boundary of compact space and did not look back. The galaxy exhaled, satisfied. For approximately 4 months. The first sign something was wrong came from the agricultural worlds of the Thessi collective. The Thessi had always grown their own food, of course. They had done so for 3,000 years. But somewhere in the last 2 centuries, without anyone quite noticing, human agricultural engineers had quietly redesigned the soil-tilling algorithms across 14 Thessi colony worlds. Not because they were asked. Because they had noticed an inefficiency and fixed it the way humans always fixed things, immediately, without fanfare, without billing anyone. When the humans left, the algorithms remained. But the updates stopped. The adaptive corrections stopped. The seasonal adjustments, the pathogen response protocols, the microirrigation calibrations that accounted for each world's unique atmospheric peculiarities, all of it had been maintained by a small team of humans who apparently thought of it as a Tuesday morning task. Within 4 months, crop yields across Thessi space dropped by 31%. The Thessi lodged a formal inquiry with the Assembly. Thorne assured them the situation was temporary. Other species would fill the gap. They did not fill the gap. The second sign came from the medical network. The Galactic Assembly operated 1,712 field hospitals across contested and developing regions of the Compact. Every member species contributed staff, equipment, and expertise. This was considered one of the Assembly's proudest achievements, proof that species could cooperate for the good of the many. What the proud achievement had quietly been running on, it turned out, was human organizational infrastructure. Not medicine, other species were extraordinary physicians, surgeons, biologists beyond human comprehension. But the systems. The scheduling. The triage protocols. The resupply chains. The translation matrices that allowed a Vorith surgeon to seamlessly hand a patient to a Thessi anesthesiologist who then transferred records to a Krellian rehabilitation specialist. All of it, every handshake and protocol and cross-species standard, had been designed, implemented, and maintained by humans. Because humans, uniquely, had grown up on a single world with hundreds of languages, dozens of competing political systems, and a genetic need to make things work when the alternative was chaos. Within 6 months of their departure, 17 hospitals reported coordination failures. Within 8 months, 4 had closed entirely. High Counselor Thorne called an emergency session. He did not yet say the word mistake. The third sign was the one that broke the silence. The compact's defensive grid, the interlocking web of sensor arrays, early warning buoys, and automated response platforms that protected the inner systems from rift incursions, went dark along a 40-light-year corridor on the outer edge of the Kessler Reach. Not because it was attacked. Because it needed maintenance. Routine maintenance. The kind performed every 8 months by a rotating team of human engineers who had apparently been doing it so quietly, so reliably, for so long, that no one had ever thought to write down exactly how it was done or who else might do it. The knowledge lived in hands and heads that were now, by assembly decree, on the other side of the boundary. The rift incursion that followed was small. Only 3 stations lost. Only a few thousand casualties. But the silence after it was deafening. Zyrex Thorne found himself, in the small hours of an assembly recess, standing before a viewport looking out at stars that suddenly felt farther away. His aide placed a data slate in his hands. A full accounting, compiled, at his request, by the Assembly's own analysts, of every human contribution to the Compact's infrastructure over the past 200 years. He read for a long time. The list was not of grand gestures. Humanity had not saved the galaxy in blinding heroic moments. They had not won great battles single-handedly or invented world-ending weapons or bent the laws of physics with sheer audacity. They had shown up. Every day, in every unglamorous corner of a civilization that stretched across 400 light-years. They had fixed the things that needed fixing. They had learned languages no one expected them to learn. They had sat in rooms where they were the smallest and strangest species present and they had said, "What if we tried it this way?" And then gone ahead and tried it, and then refined it, and then handed the result to everyone else without asking for credit. They had been the connective tissue of the Compact, and the Compact had mistaken them for decoration. Thorne set down the data slate. He did not say the word mistake aloud even then. He was not built for it. But he thought it, which was perhaps worse, because counselors of his age and station were not accustomed to thinking things they could not control. The message he sent to Ambassador Ethan Cross was terse. Official. It used the formal language of diplomatic inquiry and carefully avoided any phrasing that could be interpreted as contrition. Ethan Cross's reply came 47 hours later, which was fast considering the distance, and read as follows. High Counselor, thank you for reaching out. We have been busy. Humanity has established 31 new colony worlds in the past 8 months, 3 of which have already achieved agricultural self-sufficiency. We've also completed an independent defensive grid covering our sovereign space, a medical network serving all 31 worlds, and, you'll find this interesting, a new interstellar communications protocol that is roughly 40% more efficient than the current Compact standard. We are open to discussion. Regards. Ambassador Ethan Cross. Provisional Governor, New Geneva. Free Human Territories. Thorne read it 3 times. There was no anger in it. No gloating. No triumphant declaration of humanity's superiority or an itemized accounting of the Assembly's failures. Just a quiet, factual update from a man who had spent the last 8 months doing what humans apparently did when you pushed them out the door and told them they were on their own. They built. The negotiations that followed lasted 2 years. They were difficult, and Thorne found them humiliating in ways he had no language for. Humanity returned to the Compact, not as members, but as partners, a distinction that came with an entirely new treaty framework that Ethan Cross had, characteristically, already drafted before the first session. The humans brought the new communications protocol. They brought the agricultural algorithms. They brought, without being asked, a full written manual for maintaining the Kessler Reach defensive grid. And on the last day of negotiations, as the final seals were being pressed into the treaty document, Ethan Cross leaned across the table and said, in a voice that carried no edge at all, "We never wanted to leave, you know." Thorne met his eyes. Brown, steady, utterly without malice. "I know," the High Counselor said. It was the closest he ever came to the word mistake. It was, everyone agreed later, enough. Somewhere on New Geneva, on a Tuesday morning, someone made pancakes. The galaxy turned. And humanity, quiet as ever, got back to work.